the ANC from the Freedom Charter should be isolated in the ANC. The ANC Youth League would not stagger in dealing with and isolating those who continue to pursue and champion imperialist policies that seek to undermine our future. The ANC further resolved that the Freedom Charter ought to be respected and honored when it urges that the mineral wealth beneath the soil, the banks and monopoly industry shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole. All other industry and trade shall be controlled to assist the well-being of the people. All people shall have equal rights to trade where they choose, to manufacture and enter all trades, crafts and professions. The ANC Youth League notes that the people do not own the mineral wealth of the country. The mineral wealth of the country is owned by a few, most often foreign listed companies that extract our mineral wealth and beneficiate it in foreign lands. This in return leaves our people jobless as international companies create value chains that are outside this country and use our minerals to open manufacturing plants in foreign countries, just creating jobs in foreign countries. Using our own minerals, leaving South Africans, the youth in particular, without prospects of jobs. The ANC Youth League believes that the state mining company must not be a shelf company that only exists in paper. The state mining company must now have proper mining projects and operations that create a value chain of beneficiation in order to create manufacturing plants for job creation. The state can no longer operate as an issuer of mining licenses only, but must now play an active role in ensuring that the mineral wealth of the country benefits citizens of South Africa and the youth in particular. It is the view of the ANC Youth League that before the end of the current calendar year, legislation allowing for the establishment of the state bank should be finalized. The post bank should be as such converted to operate as a state bank and the primary banker of government. The state bank will be utilized as a critical instrument to drive development and youth entrepreneurship. The recent scandals of criminality in the financial sector proves that the financial sector in the country is not patriotic and has an agenda to collapse our economy and sabotage government. The recent development in the financial sector calls for the following action to be taken. Speedily recover all monies owed by banks resulting from apartheid bailout from all affected banks. The money recovered must be used to fund free education and youth development. We must find all banks involved in the collusion that resulted in the collapse of the rand. The money recovered from fines must be used to support youth entrepreneurship. The 10% must be considered for increase to 18% on forex trading related revenue, considering they collapsed the rand to nearly 18 rands to the US dollar. Review and withdraw the banking license of ABSA as a repeat offender. Government must withdraw all its funds kept with ABSA and use the state bank as a primary banker of government, starting with the payment of social grants. Immediately initiate and conclude measures that will abolish private ownership of the Reserve Bank by March 2018. Moody's must no longer be invited to do any form of rating for South Africa, as they have been proven to be susceptible to corruption, for which they recently paid the fine. There must be restructuring of Treasury administration and management, starting with the redeployment of Comrade Pravin Gordhan. The ANC Youth League would like to thank thousands of young people who headed the call for the National Day of Action against ABSA. The National Day of Action proved beyond reasonable doubt that the ANC Youth League remains the only gigantic youth organization in the country and will continue with its fight for issues affecting young people with the passion they deserve. The ANC National Executive Committee reflected on the issue of higher education and training. The ANC Youth League notes that great strides have been made by the ANC-led government to open access to education. This, however, is not enough, as the ultimate objective is the attainment and realization of free and quality education for the poor. The ANC Youth League notes and supports research that free education for the poor is possible in 2017 calendar year for first-year students with parents with an income below 370,000. The research documents, which is in possession of the Department of Higher Education and Training, estimate that it will cost government between 6 billion and 7 billion to fund free education for the poor first-year students. If provision of this funding is made, it will also release portions of NSFAS to fund more students. This should be the first step towards the broad rollout of free and quality education for the poor. The ANC Youth League is disturbed and will vehemently fight tooth and nail against the intentions of the Department of Higher Education to commercialize the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. It is our firm view that this will reverse our gains and strides made towards the attainment of free education. The ANC Youth League notes with great dismay and sadness the tragic incidences surrounding the Life Esidimeni issue, which has resulted into the loss of precious life. The ANC Youth League will continue to pursue an agenda to hold those responsible accountable. Maximum punishment must be handed down against those responsible. The loss of life cannot be taken lightly, and culprits and all those who were involved must be punished heavily. The ANC Youth League is greatly concerned by efforts to bring instability in the security cluster. These attempts started through attempts to discredit the Minister of State Security through lies, gossip, and unfounded rumors. They have now taken a turn to discredit management in the security cluster. The state has a responsibility to bring stability in the security cluster. It must never be allowed that self-appointed investigators like Paul O'Sullivan, who operate as pseudo-state investigators, to bring the security cluster into disrepute. The ANC Youth League is greatly worried about the implementation of the concept of private prosecutions, which gives those with money a chance to privately prosecute. It is the view of the ANC Youth League that the issue of private prosecution will now commercialize justice and favor those with money, who in majority are white and rich. The issue of private prosecutions is also an attempt to privatize and bring into disrepute the public prosecution system. The ANC Youth League welcomes the State of the Nation address delivered by the President of the Republic, President J.G. Zuma. It is the view of the ANC Youth League that the State of the Nation address gives hope to a better future for South Africans and youth in particular. The ANC Youth League notes the continued barbaric acts and continue to be shown by the EFF in Parliament. The Youth League holds a view that there must be breathalyzer tests done in Parliament, as EFF members seem to confuse Parliament with the shebeen. The Parliament cannot continue to be held at ransom by delinquents who defend white capital with passion and have nothing to contribute except cause disorder and anarchy. The ANC Youth League is disappointed with the acceptance of Morocco back to the African Union. The ANC Youth League views this as a setback towards a call for total liberation of African countries. The liberation movement seems to have betrayed the people of Western Sahara. We call for the review of this decision and call on the South African government to engage other heads of state for the review of this decision. Our strong ties and solidarity with the people of Western Sahara must now be stronger than ever. The ANC Youth League would like for all South Africans to be safe with the reported tropical storm or cyclone Dineo, as it is called, said to say to South Africa. We note that weather reports indicate that the storm might not be as fierce as it has been in other parts. We, however, plead with all South Africans to exercise maximum caution and remain informed about the storm in order to take safety measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Would now open a session for questions and would appreciate if there are no questions, but let us first identify if there are any houses or media houses that wants to ask questions. Okay. It's Macele, number 2. Thank you in that sequence. Number 2.
My name is Giovanni from ANCYL. We have heard hearsay about a special NEC meeting on Monday. Can you confirm, deny, and give us comments on it? Thank you.
Special NEC of the ANC Youth League. Okay. Okay, there is no one who wants to ask questions because I will not allow afterthoughts and questions that are provoked by other questions. Are you 300? You are number 2. Is there any hand this side? Okay. No, thanks.
I've got just a few questions. I'm not. Thank you so much, Tidi Madia from News 24. Don't call me 300. Just a few questions. The first one about the ABSA March. I do understand that not all leadership was there. I just wanted to find out what's the reason why the entire ANC Youth League leadership was not at the helm for the march. Secondly, I think you asked a question about Gauteng. This might, oh, sorry. And then also just the NGC. I think the NGC was expected to take place this year for the Youth League. How's the process coming along? Are the regions getting ready for that? How's that going? Let me leave it at that for now. Yeah.
Okay, second one.
Just a quick one, Clement from Eyewitness News. Why do you believe the finance minister must be redeployed? Thanks.
Yes, Samgelo.
Samkelo Maseo from Jacaranda FM. Since you are saying the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan must be redeployed, who do you have in mind to be the next Finance Minister? Is it perhaps Brian Molefe or anybody? Please just give us a clarity and a name to be specific. And lastly, if you speak about a state mining company, what processes do you want to be followed for that state mining company to be established? And who do you have in mind to lead it? The last question. Parliament over the last few days had the State of the Nation debate. Opposition parties had a large number of young people debating there. I think from the ANC side, the youngest person was the provincial chair of the ANC in KZN, Sihlezi Galala. How do you plan to counter opposition parties in Parliament if most of you are outside? Thank you.
No, can I just ask two add-ons quickly? Just two very quick add-ons.
Okay.
Thank you, sorry. We've been hearing stories about youth league members attacking each other in the Eastern Cape. Can I just get clarity on what's going on there? Heard some were hospitalized. And then another thing, there is an NEC member of the league who wrote an open letter about the president. And I think I last spoke to you, Mlonde, and you said she could not go unpunished because you've made calls about other leaders to get punished when they go out of rank, step out of rank. So what's happening with her? Thank you.
Okay. We'll take a second set if the need arises.
No, there's no second set. They are not asking questions about the statement. So there's no second set because you're not asking questions about the statement. All right, no, thank you very much. Let me start with the last question. The National Executive Committee of the Youth League, how it runs its affairs does not report them to the meeting. So the issue of the comrade who wrote an open letter to the president about the president of the Youth League is an internal organizational matter. It ends there. There's a question about attacks or media reports about members of the Youth League attacking each other in the Eastern Cape. The national officials of the Youth League or national office is waiting for a report from deployees who were running that Congress to get the sense of what would have happened. But anarchy is not allowed in the movement. And upon us receiving that report, we will then take the necessary actions if indeed those things happened in a gathering of the Youth League. So as it stands, we don't have a report. I don't want to take all the questions so that other comrades can take. The special NEC meeting of the Youth League. You see, this thing of not talking about the statement is very dangerous. There is no special meeting on Monday of the Youth League. There's only a special meeting of the ANC NEC. To appoint, I resign that the department that must do its function ANCYL. The last issue that I want to take is the so-called regions that are under administration. Now, I was an MEC, I used to place municipalities under administration, so there is no region that is under administration in the youth league. There is no such a thing. There's a region that was dissolved, and there was a province that was dissolved, so there's been structures put in place with full powers of the RSC and the PEC to oversee the activities of the youth league in those particular areas, and that's, those comrades that are appointed are doing that. No, actually, you can take the others.
I was not aware it was you, Tsiti. No, definitely not you. Yeah, but you must introduce. You must introduce that person who said you are the 300. We have been very clear on the issue of resignation, that anyone who is found to be responsible for the loss of life, maximum punishment, can't just be a resignation and then that is it. Maximum punishment must be enforced. But you cannot establish who is responsible, and those who are responsible and who will be found to have acted in a manner that is not befitting of leadership. Maximum punishment must as such be done. The other question, I think we must be very clear here that the problem that we have been raising as the ANC Youth League since last year is that financial institutions like banks continue to enjoy protection of treasury. And treasury is one institution that has been created to protect white monopoly capital for quite some time. And it is becoming evident now why they have always enjoyed support. One thing that the apartheid government did is that when we crossed over to 1994, they made sure that the institution, which is treasury and management, continues to serve and protect the interest of white monopoly capital. And our deployee, since coming in as well, has not acted to make sure that we restructure. Now we want a different kind of cadreship caliber that will have appetite to dismantle the approach of protecting banks and capital in South Africa. There are a number of issues that we have raised that pertain to treasury. Where is the state bank today? That we have consistently said as the ANC there must be a state bank. We are told it's being held by legislation. Legislation that is supposed to go to Parliament, and ANC adopts that legislation, and then we have a state bank. Because there are people who are sitting on top of those things, it is not going to happen. And that are part of the reasons we are saying now Comrade Pravin must be redeployed somewhere else, get someone who's gonna start cracking the whip in treasury, make sure that the people who are in treasury are people who are gonna have appetite to pursue the development agenda of South Africa and not to protect white monopoly capital. We have said the issue of triple PFA must go. It's still there. And people are still implementing it. So as a result, that is why we're saying it's not just Pravin only, but from top to bottom. We've told the DG, came to our NEC meeting, that you, DG, you are not doing a good job in terms of fostering transformation. And that DG thought we were playing. We are coming for that particular Director General, together with the whole treasury staff. They must change their mindset. If they can't, those who don't want to shape up must ship out of treasury so that we can have pursue a development agenda. The issue of the state mining company. The state mining company already exists. It's registered. The problem is that it is existing on paper. It is not pursuing any development projects or any mining projects. All that we are saying as the ANC Youth League is that yes, we acknowledge the stride that has been made towards the establishment, but that establishment currently exists only in paper. What we want to see is a state mining company that engages in meaningful projects. If we are going to start, we probably should start with the gas in the Karoo. That it must not just leave the country without, products being made out of it. And as a result, it will create jobs. And most of those jobs will go to young people. And if it continues to exist on paper, then it really, really does not assist us. I think the president has dealt with some of the issues around the issue of disbandment of regions. Those are some of the issues that are internal within the organization that we'll deal with. Once we have finalized any other issue, but we must know it's not abnormal for provincial executive committees to take decisions to restructure structures of the organization that are not functioning very well. But those are internal issues of the organization. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think there was one question that was left out around why was the entire leadership of the Youth League not at the march? TD, I think you and your people there in News 24, you need to learn to report properly to the people of South Africa, because ourselves as this leadership were present in the march, and also thousands of young people from across all the country came in support of the march. But for you to go out and report that there were 300 people in attendance to that march, really, that is totally not being honest to the whole process of reporting. So we want to state it here, to put it on record, that the march was a success. There were thousands of young people who came from all corners of South Africa in support of the call that the Youth League is making, that ABSA must pay back the money that they looted from our own state coffers. So I'm still insisting that we really need to report properly. Even when we leave here, let us go back and report properly. I think these comrades, they don't have many issues that are pertaining the statement. I think those are the issues we have managed to respond to. Mulondi?
I think it's some girl. I would have done a very big mistake if I don't attend to this question that you raised, particularly around the issue of young people in parliament that are not rising to the occasion. In fact, that's what you're suggesting, as opposed to what the EFF is doing, because it's young people. And I must indicate that, okay. Okay, I think still on that, let me still clarify it. I think the issue of infusing young people, from where we are, the Youth League is doing fairly well. Looking at from the local government elections that we came from, the African National Congress Youth League made a call and the ANC was able to honor that. So we have many young people that are representing us in the municipality. However, the only issue is that, we have not went to national government elections, where we'll still have an opportunity again to deploy more young people. But we're fairly happy and okay with young people that are there. It's not only the old guards. It's just at the times people make mistakes. They think they're old guards because how they behave, some of the young leaders that are there. It's primarily because they are polished. You also understand that the ANC, it's a university of intelligentsias. It polishes young people that rise to the occasion and that speaks content. So the behavior, it's not barbaric as you may see from the other side of young people from the EFF. So Hence, at times, people may confuse it, that there are no young people. There are indeed young people, but they only rise when it's necessary, and they understand the agenda and how they must conduct themselves in Parliament. Thank you very much.
No, thanks. Just two things before we close the session. No, Auntie, that's why I said two things. Don't worry, don't worry. Two things before we wrap up the session. The first one is that the NGC, in terms of our constitution, is expected to sit after 18 months. Now, if my counting is correct, SG, that should be in March. But we are cognizant of many factors. Ours is not only to look at the time frame, is the political environment fine, are we logistically ready, have we made the necessary preparations? And I think that at the time that the National Executive Committee reflects on those and sets a date, we'll then have an idea when the NGC will take place. But I can assure you, we will have the NGC before the National Congress of the Youth League. Whether it will be after the policy conference or it will be before the 2017 December Congress of the ANC, but we'll have it before we go to our National Congress. I think that would be sufficient to respond to the NGC. Just to emphasize, by the way, DSG, you know the problem that we have as human beings. We want at times to seek platforms to legitimize rumors that we might have heard somewhere. And let me tell you why do I say that. We had a press briefing here, President. It was just myself and you. We were there, DSG. No one asked us where is the TG, DP, and the SG. No one asked us. No one asked us that question. Now, surely today, when we are asked about the march, that can be a question, because I will ask a question to a person who asks a question and to everyone. Out of so many national events that the ANC Youth League has, have we been counting how many NEC members are present? And if we had not done so, then it would be unfair to pose this question unless we are seeking to legitimize a rumor from somewhere. And then therefore, in light of that, the national leadership of the African National Congress Youth League was present in the march. The last one, before we close, because I know that the issue of the NGC has been addressed. You know, it is quite interesting in South Africa how we seek to report and want to report. And by the way, whilst a journalist at News 24 might have made a typo of 300, one thing I can confirm, DSG, is that the journalist was factual. We were more than 300, and that's what the article says. We were more than 300. That can be confirmed. But the intention of writing 300 as opposed to 30,000 is something else, and I want to leave it there as something else. The reason why I'm raising this is because, you know, in South Africa, the country was held at ransom by Nkandla. Subsequently to that, a country has been held at ransom by a removal of a minister and everyone demanding answers. But now that we have answers, no one is asking the intention of these financial interests as rigorously and vigorously have you been doing with other matters. You know, the report says since 2015 April, this has been happening. And at the recall of Nene, we're told that really we lost serious monies. But we are not asked to what effect did these institutions do, and therefore subsequently the action that must be taken. But we are very keen, very keen on these Molanyana issues, which in essence brings to question, about the methodology of reporting and those that control media houses in South Africa. And I would understand from a point of view of a worker who gets to be told that you can't write the story. But it would be incorrect that none of us, in fact, wish to extend these platforms to engage on these matters that remain unreported about or sufficiently not reported about. You know, I'm sure, President, if you were to trip and fall here, the first headlines is that Oros trips and falls as he walks out of the media briefing. But no one will tell us about the millions and trillions of rands that are being taken from our land and from our people. Because the narration is that it is not corruption, but it is colluding. Now, it is quite interesting that also collusion and colluding only happens when the pigmentation is white, but when it's black, it's corruption. But none of you in the media wants to contest that and rectify it. But some of you will understand. To put bread on the table requires that sometimes you put at bay your principles and methods of reporting. But we equally request that when you see other things, can you equally apply those ethos, put at bay other issues, stick to your issues of bread and butter. Because we can't afford to have a media that always bashes our government, but when wrong things happen in the private sector, everyone keeps quiet as everything is fine. I'll allow you, President, to respond to a question that says, what are we going to do with ABSA moving forward?
Well, you were supposed to respond to it. You know the media, our friends. Today, the citizen says to us that, a headline that we must treat this collision factor with, we must treat it carefully so that we must not scare investors. If they must go to hell, they can go to hell. The investors, because we cannot allow people to manipulate our currency, and we must handle them with soft gloves because they are going to be scared. If they want to go, they can go. We cannot succumb to the pressure of criminals. Now, the issue is, what are we going to do with ABSA? Our memorandum is very clear. I'm sure we must put it on the website. Is that we'll mobilize all South Africans who are banking with ABSA to close their accounts. And I can tell you that young people in their numbers have started to do that, and members of the Youth League in particular. We will put pressure on government to stop doing business with ABSA with immediate effect. We have said that if they don't respond to us positively in 21 days, we will disrupt their activities. You would know that the Youth League had activities of going to greet them in the number of their branches across the country. We were just greeting. So this time we'll intensify the greeting. Earlier this year, there was a group called Occupy Little House. I'm sure we'll create our own Occupy ABSA group by members of the Youth League and South Africans who are alive to the criminal activities of this institution. Having said this, ladies and gentlemen, you have not asked about education and a number of things that you are raising here because you want to create your own narrative, our media people. We still request, as the President has said in January 8, report fairly. We know that most of you are not captured, are Nespas. And we know who are owned by Nespas. Rupert has got shares in almost every media house you represent here. But please, you know that citizen journalist, can we follow him? What he did, report fairly and objectively. Don't write things that you should not write. No, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the media. But, Sidi, so we are requesting that you report fairly, and we can be good friends if you report fairly. And the last point we want to make is that, you know, there was a question, SG, that with this coverage, with the typo, You know, we are not in a beauty contest. Whether you cover us not, for you, it's not a factor. What is important for us is the actions we do. We don't want coverage. But South Africans would know where they are, that this youth league is raising these issues very sharply. So we're not in a contest of in coverage. But as you cover properly. And if that you've got those who are blind, who may liken 30,000 to 300, please get necessary medical attention, because the youth league will be having a number of activities this year. So we would need people with clear vision so that you can see properly. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. I would only allow 5 hands, and from there we are going to close. All right, it's just 2. Hope that the questions are not many, so that we allow filing and all of the things. We'll start with Samgelo, then we'll go to Matsele.
Samgelo Masaka from Jacaranda again. To the President of the Youth League, in December, if I'm not mistaken, last year in KZN at the Olive Convention Center, you said you demanded that President Zuma collapse the rand. Yet, you are here today contradicting yourself, saying the banks have colluded to collapse the rand. Which exactly? What do you want? Who do you want to collapse the rand? And who will benefit once the rand is collapsed? Will it be those who are controlling the means of production, or will it be the poor? Then to Mlondi. What comes of your attacks on journalists in the country? Do you want journalists to push your propaganda or to report news fairly and accurately? A mistake may have been done on your Youth League march, but do not always jump to assumptions that people are out to paint a particular narrative. And the last question, which we have not yet answered. What is stalling your National General Council, the NGC? Is it a lack of branches, regions, provinces? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I would, with passion, Comrade Samgelo, respond to your question. And by the way, it's not a question that we've avoided. The question was, when are we having the NGC? Now the question is, why are we stalling? So these are 2 different questions. Matsele.
There was a statement that they released, which the PEC then asked them to withdraw, from what I made about the Youth League in Gauteng. Thank you.
And there is no other person who wants to ask a question.
Eastern Cape. There was a statement that was released by the provincial leadership, the Office of Resolution of Regions there. Those developments regarding the dissolutions of structures in the Eastern Cape, with the provincial ANC not recognizing both the structure that you set up.
And the Secretary General will take the rest. I just want to take the last question from Power FM, and they are not my good friends. No, look, the ANC Youth League, in terms of the constitution of the ANC, it's an autonomous organization. Now, we don't need a recognition. Our decision do not need recognition of any PEC of the ANC, including that of the Eastern Cape. Where we are, the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League has appointed a PTT, given its terms of reference, and they operate like any other PEC. As for the actions that they may have taken, including dissolutions of regions, there are internal processes in the organization. We have received appeals from the dissolved regions by the PTT, and we will then process them internally, subject them to the organizational process of dealing with them. But where we are sitting, the only recognized provincial structure of the ANC Youth League in the Eastern Cape is the PTT. And it has got the right to take any decision. But when its decisions are appealed, we'll process them internally.
Okay. Sometime last year, there was a report, I remember, it said, Mlondi, ANC Youth League SG says the struggle is about toilets and whiskey. No one apologized. It remained out there. Again, there came news reports about the TG, there came news reports about the Youth League, painting an image of a Youth League that is stupid, that does not have capacity to think, that does not know its way. That narrative was created in the media space. And when such narrative remain there and are not challenged to be false, they remain the truth. And we are not gonna stand here and be apologetic when narratives continue to be created and those narratives are not true. We must correct those particular narratives. If it was a typo, then the journalist must do the honorable thing, write another article and say, I did not report properly. But because of pride issues, they're not gonna do that. You know? Then you must run it front page, run it again and again up until it finds resonance, till everybody sees it. Because the problem is that people go unpunished with writing things that are not proper. And the media is an important tool, even to us as an organization, to communicate what we have been doing. The other problem is that there will be great appetite. If we were discussing things that are dividing the ANC here, there will be a lot of appetite for those things. But when we're discussing constructive issues that are affecting young people, there's less appetite. And we can't leave those issues without touching to them. On the issue of the rent, we must learn also today that you are not going to ask direct questions as if we operate in federal offices, that one there, that one there. No, that's not how we operate. We operate as a unit. Maybe we need to understand what has happened here on this issue of rent. I'm going to try and make this very practical so that we can get to understand it better. You have banks who come together and say, when you are trading in your forex market, make sure you sell the rand, because we've got muscle. When we do that, the ripple effect will that the rand becomes less in demand and the rest will follow and sell the rand and make it less in demand. That is the power those banks have. And they can decide at any given moment in time to say that tomorrow we are going to sell more of a rand so that there is a ripple effect, that the rand must not be in demand, so much so that it loses its value. These banks have been doing this for some time. We raised the issue last year that Barclays was colluding with institutions like Goldman Sachs to collapse the rand. People laughed. They say, no, these ones, they don't know what they are talking about. Feeding to the narrative I was saying that we're a youth league that can't think. But it's probably because we were thinking above the ceiling. That's why we could identify these things. When they do that, they hold the country at ransom. It means they can say today, we don't want Njabulo to be the Minister of Finance. If you put in Njabulo, we will collapse the rand. And indeed, because they are colluding, when you appoint Njabulo, they will wake up in the morning and collapse the rand. And then people will say, no, the markets are reacting negatively towards the appointment, whereas it's a planned scheme for them to make more money. That's what they did to us last year. They saw the appointment of Van Rooyen as an opportunity to cash in more money. What do? They lead the process, they sell the rent. They come to us and they say to us, no, the markets are reactive quite negatively to this person. Whereas they know themselves that they were trying to control us. And we yielded to a certain extent to that particular demand. We made changes. And when we made changes, then they started saying, no, now we are happy. Whereas they are busy colluding. The issue here is that should we continue to listen to people who collude in order to control how government take decisions. No, if they want to continue to collaborate in collapsing the rand, they have been seen, they can continue to do so, but they must know from now on that there will be action. And that is why we're saying that government must even consider reviewing the license of ABSA, because they are a repeated offender. They are a repeated offender. They are just under a scandal of apartheid. Money is given to them, which they've been hiding. What do they do? Now they come, there's another scandal. They are behaving like a repeated offender. So serious action must be taken so that these financial institutions are not given power over government and how government manages its affairs. Even right now, we're talking about giving the very same uncredible banks that are involved in criminal actions that they must start taking punitive measures on people through that fake bill. What do you think they will do? Because they are not credible, they will use that to make more money for themselves and try and control government, and we are not going to allow for that to happen. And that is where the issue of collapsing of the rand comes from. I hope it is very much clear now. On the issue of life as it remains, we are very clear there. We are saying anyone who has been seen to have taken part in wrongdoing which resulted into the loss of life must face maximum penalties and must face maximum action. Whoever that person is, whether it's Makura, whether it's anyone, they must face maximum action. That is the view of the ANC Youth League. About the retracting of statements and so on, we're not going to venture into that because some of the statements were said not to have been issued by the Youth League in terms of being retracted and all those things. But the official position of the ANC Youth League is that anyone who played a role that resulted into the loss of life must suffer maximally so. On the issue of stalling the NGC. No one is stalling the NGC. If we are stalling the NGC, maybe it will have been better if you are asking maybe that question in June, saying that no, you are stalling the NGC. We have to prepare for the NGC. The NEC must set up dates. There is a process that must be into it. If we are stalling the NGC, we will be saying here there will be no NGC or something to that matter. But those decisions are rested with the National Executive Committee, and we cannot account on such decisions to the media. Those are decisions that must be taken by the ANC Youth League. Thank you very much.
No, thanks. I hope that the questions have been responded to, including that one of attacking or perceived attack to journalists, because really it's not an attack, but it's a request that we ought to be close to reality and facts. You see, if we are taking anyone SG, we would have said maybe SABC should not be here because they arrived late in our march. So we're not attacking anyone, but we're just requesting that can we be factual? That's all. Be close to reality. That is all we're requesting. And by the way, SG, you are quite correct. We can't be said to be stalling. March has not even arrived. And there are congresses of the youth league sitting across the country, so we can't be accused of being short of branches. That much we are quite confident on, that we are not leading the jackets, but we are leading members of the African National Congress Youth League from various quarters of the country. I think that would bring us to the end of our media briefing. We appreciate it very much. Pass our greetings to ANCA and tell them that we love them very much. Thank you.
That was the ANC Youth League briefing the media after the NEC meeting at Luthuli House, the ANC headquarters in the CBD of Johannesburg. They spoke about bank collusion, their thoughts on that, as well as giving their condolences to those that had lost people in the tropical depression, now renamed ex-Dineo. We take a short break. When we come back, we carry on with the news.